If you have been trying to lose fat for a while, you have probably heard the advice to simply eat less, create a bigger calorie deficit, and stay consistent. And while this idea works in the beginning, it often stops working over time, leaving many people confused and frustrated. At first, reducing calories leads to predictable results because your body responds by using stored energy and fat loss begins to happen, which reinforces the belief that eating less is always the solution. However, as time goes on, this approach can start to break down, and in many cases, eating less stops producing the same results, even when people are trying harder than ever. This is not because fat loss no longer follows the principles of energy balance, but because the body is constantly adapting to the conditions it is exposed to, especially when those conditions involve prolonged calorie restriction. One of the first things that happens is a reduction in total daily energy expenditure, which includes not only your metabolism, but also your daily movement and physical activity, and this number is highly dynamic, not fixed. As you continue eating less, your body begins to conserve energy by becoming more efficient in how it uses calories, which means that the same intake now creates a smaller deficit than before. At the same time, your body weight decreases, and a smaller body requires less energy to maintain, which further reduces the size of your calorie deficit, even if your diet has not changed. Another important factor is the way your body responds to low energy availability, because when calories are consistently low, your body begins to prioritize essential functions and reduce energy spent on non-essential activities. This often shows up as lower energy levels, reduced motivation to move, and a gradual decrease in daily activity, even if you are not consciously trying to move less. You may find yourself sitting more, walking less, or avoiding small movements throughout the day, and although these changes feel insignificant, they can have a large impact on your total calorie burn. Exercise itself can also become more efficient over time, which means that the same workouts burn fewer calories than they did in the beginning, especially as your body adapts to repeated movement patterns. All of these changes combine to reduce the effectiveness of eating less, and eventually the calorie deficit that once drove fat loss becomes much smaller or disappears entirely. At this point, many people make the mistake of cutting calories even further, believing that more restriction will solve the problem, but in reality, this often makes things worse. Lowering calories even more increases fatigue, reduces daily movement further, and can lead to stronger hunger signals, making it harder to stay consistent over time. This creates a cycle where you are eating very little, feeling exhausted and still not losing fat, which can be extremely frustrating. Instead of continuing to reduce calories, a more effective approach is to change the strategy in a way that restores a sustainable calorie deficit without increasing stress on the body. One of the most important changes you can make is increasing daily movement, not through intense exercise, but through consistent low-intensity activity such as walking more, standing more, and reducing long periods of inactivity. These small changes can significantly increase your total daily energy expenditure without causing additional fatigue, making them more sustainable than adding more intense workouts. Another key strategy is improving consistency in your diet, which may involve being more accurate with portion sizes, tracking hidden calories more carefully, and re-establishing the habits that were present when you first started seeing results. In many cases, simply restoring consistency and increasing awareness is enough to bring back a calorie deficit and restart fat loss. In some situations, especially after long periods of dieting, taking a short break from the calorie deficit can also be helpful because it allows your body to recover from prolonged restriction and can improve both energy levels and adherence. This is often referred to as a diet break, where calorie intake is temporarily increased closer to maintenance, not to gain fat, but to create a better environment for long-term progress. When people return to a calorie deficit after a short break, they often find it easier to stay consistent, move more, and continue losing fat in a more sustainable way. The key idea to understand is that eating less is not always the answer, especially when your body has already adapted to a low intake, and pushing harder in the same direction often leads to worse results. Fat loss is not just about how much you eat, but about how your body responds to what you do. And when that response changes, your strategy needs to change as well. The people who succeed long-term are not the ones who constantly restrict more, but the ones who understand when to adjust, when to increase activity, and when to take a step back in order to move forward again. If you're interested in learning more about how metabolism affects fat loss and how to build a more sustainable approach, you can find additional resources in the description below.